Wasn't expecting to have to hold my microphone while I read this, so bear with me a little bit. My name is Sean McAllister, and I'm the Executive Director of the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of NORML. We're the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws. I am a voting, tax-paying, small business-owning Texan. I have a 9-year-old son, a mortgage, debt from credit cards, and a student loan. I'm an average, everyday citizen, just like you, and I think that the prohibition of marijuana has caused more harm to this country and its citizens than the plant ever could. Cannabis has never pointed a gun at a patient in a wheelchair. It's never kicked in your door during the middle of the night, shot your dog, taken your kids, your property, your sense of security, or your freedom. It hasn't stolen your driver's license or canceled your student aid. No, cannabis hasn't done any of these things, but prohibition continues to allow these things to happen every day, and I, for one, am sick of it. No matter what you call it, weed, pot, ganja, grass, herb, or my personal favorite, the devil's lettuce. Thanks to prohibition, the average price of marijuana has dropped while its potency has increased. Thanks to an unregulated black market, it's easier for kids to get marijuana than it is for them to get alcohol. Why? Because drug dealers don't check ID. When's the last time that you heard about a high school beer dealer or a tequila dealer getting busted? It doesn't happen. If you can't control the sale of a product, how can you expect to keep it out of the hands of kids? It's futile. Prohibition does not protect our children. The prohibitionists want you to think that smoking marijuana makes you a lazy, stupid, unmotivated criminal. Tell that to people like Ted Turner, the man who practically invented the 24-hour news cycle with CNN. He was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1991 and is one of the largest private landowners in America. Perhaps not something that you would expect from somebody who grew pot in his dorm in college. Other famous potheads include people like Sir Richard Branson, creator of the Virgin Empire. This includes everything from airlines to record companies to cell phones. This man started with nothing, and he's a pot smoker. What about Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in Olympic history? Or Rick Steves, host of the Rick Steves Europe, the most watched, longest running public access travel program in history. Not only is Rick Steves on the NORML board of directors, he actually credits marijuana for helping him to be a better writer by opening his mind to new possibilities. Carl Sagan was an astronomer, an astrophysicist, a cosmologist that won a Pulitzer Prize and an Emmy. He wrote a best-selling novel and published over 500 scientific papers and articles, and this man was a firm believer in what he called his stoned insights. Continuing on the subject of famous pot smokers, we have to recognize that 5 of the last 7 major party candidates to run for president, 3 of the last vice presidential candidates, and the last 3 presidents have all admitted to smoking pot. Could that mean that marijuana is the gateway to the White House? Cannabis is currently listed as a Schedule I drug due to its high probability for abuse and lack of accepted medical value. But if marijuana has no accepted medical value, why do organizations like the American Cancer Society, American Medical Association, the British Medical Journal, and hell, even the Texas Medical Association support medical marijuana research? Currently, more than 60 U.S. and international health organizations support granting patients immediate legal access to marijuana under a physician's supervision. But how do the people feel about marijuana? Well, thanks to a new Pew Research poll released just on Thursday, we now know that 52% of Americans support legalizing cannabis, with only 45% opposed. This is the first time in 4 decades of polling that we are in the majority. The survey, which was conducted in March, surveyed 1,500 Americans and found that, not surprisingly, young people support legalization more than anybody else. 65% of millennials, 54% of Generation Xers, 50% of baby boomers, and 32% of the silent generation favor legalization. We are the majority now. Every day this topic becomes less and less taboo thanks to the tireless efforts of activist organizations like NORML, the Marijuana Policy Project, Drug Policy Alliance, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, Americans for Safe Access, and my personal favorite, Moms for Marijuana. Too many others to be listed here, but there are many of us out there. None of these groups want you or your kids or anyone you know to use marijuana. We simply want you to understand that prohibition is a failed policy, and it's responsible for the land of the free having one of the largest prison populations in human history. There are alternatives to prohibition. We need to stop arresting and imprisoning certain American citizens for using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs. We need to be taking care of patients and veterans, not sending them to jail for using a substance that is safer than most of the legal poisons being peddled to them by the big pharmaceutical industry. In 1933, this country repealed alcohol prohibition, and here, 70 years later, we're faced with a similar task. This is the beginning of the end of the war on drugs. I invite each of you to stand up, be heard, and join this fight. Support NORML and other reform organizations that are working towards a positive change with your donations of time, talent, and money. And together, we'll continue ending cannabis prohibition one Texan at a time. Herb's the word.
All right, a little bit about myself before I get started, because I feel like I'm bringing a unique perspective to the drug policy discussion. I served in the world's finest Navy for 7 years, and while I was in, I got to see both sides of the drug war. I saw that the Navy's primary mission when operating in open waters is to stop the flow of narcotics from one country to the other, and I realized how futile of an effort that was. As a civilian, I am a lifelong member of the Atlas Society. I am a libertarian. I'm a member of NORML. I run my own chapter of NORML, and I'm also an oath keeper. I've realized that after the military, our oath continues, and our enemies are not abroad anymore, they are domestic. And taking our country back should be our priority. All right, on with this speech. My name is Tristan Tucker. I'd like to start with a brief quote to segue into why I'm here. Rand Paul recently filibustered the U.S. Senate to address our important liberties. He started this historic filibuster by saying, "I will speak until I can no longer speak. I will speak as long as it takes until the alarm is sounded from coast to coast that our Constitution is important and that your rights are precious." I am here today to represent the students. I'm here to represent the veterans of our latest illegal and immoral wars. I'm here to represent the people and our right to choose what we do with our bodies. I see marijuana, criminality, and prohibition as a human rights issue. I do not believe that our continued support for incarcerating disproportionate numbers of our minority youth in a vain attempt to arrest our way out of the drug problem is an adequate solution. I do not believe that continuing to fund Mexican drug cartels via prohibition is a humanitarian approach to our country's drug epidemic. Myself, NORML, and most of you would agree that a legal, taxed, and regulated marijuana industry is the sole solution to ending this epidemic in our nation. We must take strides toward addressing our drug prohibition problem as human rights infractions and health issues in order to actually progress this nation. I'm here to talk not only about the necessity for drug policy reform as it pertains to cannabis use, but also how it pertains to drug prohibition as a whole. Drug prohibition is, by and large, a modern set of Jim Crow laws. According to the law enforcement against prohibition, 70% of the drugs consumed in the United States are consumed by whites, whereas 70% of the people incarcerated for drug use and possession are African American. The disparity there can't be mistaken. The areas most ravaged by the drug war have been low poverty areas, specifically where larger concentrations of African Americans tend to live. According to the FBI, 1 in 11 blacks are currently serving prison sentences for drug-related crimes. That is 9.2% of the total population of African Americans in the world. Marijuana was originally made illegal in the 1930s, and the racism involved with the legality of the plant has never ceased. The plant was made illegal in part from Harry Anslinger and the government's affiliation with the movie production Reefer Madness, which blatantly said that smoking, quote, the devil's lettuce caused also, quote, Negroes to fornicate with white women and to rape white women. What are the results of being incarcerated with a felony? You lose your political voice and your right to affect legislation is taken away, effectively silencing a large group of Americans. There are no lobby organizations for convicted felons to interact with the Congress, the courts, or the president. So essentially, once the right to vote is taken from you, your real right to speech has been stripped. As time progressed and civil liberties were afforded to African Americans in the late 1960s, the drug war was officially launched. The most commonly used argument by bureaucrats in favor of the war on drugs is that drugs will destroy your lives, and I have to ask you, which causes more harm, smoking marijuana or the legal repercussions for smoking marijuana? The side effects of cannabis are far and inclusive, including but not limited to repairing brain cells damaged by alcohol consumption and helping to heal your lungs after years of abuse from cigarettes. I can see why the government doesn't want us on it. The side effect to being prosecuted for drug crimes includes never being eligible for financial aid to attend college, losing your children to the court system, and never being able to find gainful employment, and even, in most cases, being barred from joining the military. I must ask you, which is more dangerous, the drug or the drug law? Since 1972, our incarceration rates have gone through the roof. Our incarceration rates were fairly low through the remainder of the 1970s, but really caught fire under Ronald Reagan and in response to his and Nancy's nationwide DARE program, coupled with the president's incessant public announcements in regard particularly to cannabis. Programs like DARE and various other government-subsidized rehabilitation programs were actually proven years later, in the late 90s and early 2000s, to provide the real gateway to hard drug use, and provided patients of the rehabilitation center subsidized by the government and programs with a host of, the patients of the rehabilitation center were later found to be diagnosed with a host of mental disorders, including anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and in the worst cases, suicide. After George H.W. Bush's short tenure in the White House, Bill Clinton vowed to drastically scale back the federal government's involvement in efforts at curtailing drug use and the international drug trade. Contrary to Clinton's campaign promises, he racked up the largest number of drug-related incarcerations ever, until President Barack Obama. President George Bush continued the failed practices that Clinton used. Although Bush frequently catches a lot of flack for his involvement with drug-related incarcerations, the country saw far fewer dispensary raids and far fewer incarcerations for marijuana possession than the previous 4 presidents. That's a fact. In 2008, then Senator Barack Obama campaigned on promises of leaving the medical marijuana patients alone, as well as the dispensaries, and legislating via facts and science by myth and propaganda. Since he took office in 2009, we've seen constant increases in incarceration rates. 855,000 people in 2011, and just shy of 900,000 people in 2012 locked up for marijuana-related crimes alone. His administration is directly responsible for the most rapidly growing incarceration rates of legal, regulated medical marijuana patients in states that have legal, regulated medical marijuana programs. I'm the elected director of the University of North Texas chapter of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I got started with the organization by volunteering and being appointed as the Veteran Outreach Coordinator with NORML, with DFW NORML. Since I've been involved with NORML, we've made great strides in the state. Some of our accomplishments include hosting the Global Marijuana March on the front steps of Dallas City Hall last year. We had 2,000 people show up, and it was one of the most influential events that we've been able to do so far. At UNT, we've gotten the drug policies changed from them throwing students out, charging students with crimes, and making students homeless because of paraphernalia alone. They didn't even have to have a use pilot. Recently, we've been lobbying the legislature for 2 bills specifically, HB 184 and 594, both of which directly relate to marijuana possession in the state. 184 is a bill related to the decriminalization of marijuana in the state up to 1 ounce. Essentially, marijuana possession will become a ticketable offense rather than a jailable offense. The other bill, 594, refers to affirmative defense. 594 helps strengthen Texas medicinal marijuana and medical necessity laws. 594 would also provide limited protections to doctors that recommend marijuana. Recent news about marijuana federally, for both recreation and medicinally, have been overwhelming. On March 14th, cable media networks released statements from the federal government that marijuana is proving successful in treating both AIDS and cancer. 2 states, Colorado and Washington, have both legalized marijuana and thrown the bird to the federal government, thanks to a huge grassroots effort in their respective states. Thanks to legalization in those states, new research can be conducted into the healing properties of this wonderful plant. Hemp will soon be planted again legally on American soil. Cannabis is helping this country heal, not only from its prescription medication addiction, but also from its addiction to ignorance, propaganda,